The Wild Ones Conference is a time for listening, sharing, doing, and being. This conference has 2 sessions on topics selected by survey. The first is on the theme of being, and the second is about rebellion. In this session, Fionnuala O'Connell and Leen Jamaal Maarouf introduce themselves and respond to 2 questions. They discuss what is the most important conversation to have now, and what do they hope for the future. Here they are at the Haven Cafe in Cork City.
My name is Fionnuala O'Connell. I am of Liberian and Irish heritage, and I say that because it links to the name for people to understand. A lot of what I do and who I am now comes from my experience of growing up. I never wanted to go to university. I didn't think I was able for it. But I said if I was going to do something, I wanted to understand the world. And I wanted to understand inequality because living in Liberia had about 14 years of civil war. And we moved back and forth when that happened. So when we moved back to Liberia, we thought we were moving there for good. And then the war came, and then we had to come back to Ireland. And then, the war is finished. Then you move back. But going back there the final time in 2006, I saw the aftermath of the war. I saw the inequalities. And then it made me feel so angry because I just came back from Ireland where there was peace and where there was calmness. I had so much guilt in me that I left. And I left my friends and loved my family. And I think that guilt, which changed into something else over time, was a big motivation for me, going to university and taking the opportunities as we're told to take. So I studied international development and food policy because I said if I was going to do anything, it had to be something that spoke to those experiences that I had. Guilt should never be a motivation, but I think it was more than that. It was this just burning pain that I had, trying to navigate myself in these inequalities, moving when I didn't really have a choice to move. So that's just an introduction about me.
My name is Leen. I'm a Palestinian refugee from Lebanon. I just don't like the question where you're from because I just can't explain it. Sometimes I have to say Lebanon, sometimes I have to say Palestine, but I'm neither. I'm stateless. So in heart, I'm Palestinian, but I have to explain it to people that it's just what my grandparents and my parents tell me about that Palestine that kind of ties me to my homeland rather than me being allowed in actually to see my homeland. We all need to acknowledge this, what's been happening in Gaza. I think the genocide in Gaza is the first genocide in modern history that almost the entire world knows about, but is basically complicit in its silence. I just don't know how to talk about this, to be honest, but Israel killing more than 600 children now, and asking yesterday Palestinians 1.1 million to evacuate. That's more Palestinians expelled than were expelled from their homeland in 1948 since the Nakba. It's insane and it's heavy and it's confusing too because it's a learning curve for all of us and for me especially. Just moving in here, my parents kept me away from politics for so long back home because of their experiences and in the war camps. They've seen so much. I lost my brother because my mother didn't have health insurance because we don't have any rights, legal rights in Lebanon as refugees. So she didn't have health insurance and then she had to fake her identity as another woman. And she gave birth to my brother, but there was a doctor's mistake and he was born with a disability. And she couldn't report it or anything because she doesn't have any legal rights. And we lost him years after. Well, that's just one example, but just to give you an idea of how it is actually like to be a refugee in exile, especially in Lebanon, where you restrict off all your rights. But I don't think that's as important as what's happening now in Gaza and in the world. there's a protest today, but I don't think an hour or two protest is enough. I think this needs to be non-stop. I think this needs to be non-stop despite police brutality and repression in Europe, despite all the imperialism, UK, US, and EU supporting Israel and paving the way for it to continue this genocide. I think it's so overwhelming for me to see that a normal person can go on their daily lives as if there's nothing happening on the other side of the world. And I feel guilty waking up, me taking a shower this morning, and realizing I have water. And realizing yesterday I woke up at like 6 a.m. in the morning because I assumed the storm was actually warplanes. It's insane. It's insane. The silence, the shrouding silence is insane. But anyway, I'm glad I'm here today to talk about this from my heart. And I feel like at this point I just need to put all books down, like theoretical books, because theory without actual personal experience is meaningless. I'm just this person who's just very angry since I was a really little child and wanted to do something about this world and saw all these injustices around me. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there. There's so much to talk about, but I'm pretty sure they're gonna come up.
Yeah. So we have the question here, and it's, what do you think is the most needed conversation for this group to have?
Well, we can talk about one thing. We can talk about a couple of things. I don't think there's just one conversation that is needed.
Yeah, that's true.
They're all connected too.
They're all connected, and as you spoke, I just connected so much too. I think one thing that came true as well is like that kind of sense of guilt that I think it kind of resonates with a lot of people who leave and who are in an area of safety and having to watch or hear about something happening at home or to people we love.
No, I agree with you. Like, me moving here made it very obvious. Maybe just because I can't find anybody like me, for example, like a refugee from Lebanon. Yeah. Like, I meet a lot of Palestinians, but I also feel like sometimes I wouldn't connect. Because it's like I had a specific community back in Lebanon, and that feeling of belonging to a certain group. And then moving here and feeling guilty because I can't do anything about my community back home as well, but also feeling alone in it.
Yeah.
And that adds up the guilt in a way.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should feel guilty. That's the thing.
I know. I hear what you're saying. I was born in South Africa, right? It was during apartheid. When you speak about that belonging, I have it and I don't. Sometimes I feel like I'm floating in between spaces, and I think it makes it easier for me, and I feel free. I think that's where my freedom exists, in between those spaces of not belonging sometimes. Because although I have like a black mom and a white father, and my parents have this history, and I lived in Liberia and I lived in Ireland, I'm not of a place.
Yeah.
I lived there and I went to school and I was accepted in Liberia, but I was never seen as 100% Liberian. So it's interesting sometimes when you're trying to almost feel this pain, because sometimes people's like you're not entitled to feel this pain because you're not really Liberian or you're not really Irish. Like, what are you talking about? You don't understand. And that's something I kind of experience a lot, and I kind of try to navigate a lot. And then moving to Ireland, and like, you're white, you're black, you're not Irish, you're this. So it makes it difficult to connect to the Irish kind of landscape and the history and everything that goes with it. So I think that's a space where that's very kind of tricky for me, although I am there to kind of talk against the pain, and I feel the pain, but a lot of the time I'm told I shouldn't because I am not 100% of a space. when I was born in South Africa, my mom and dad weren't allowed in the same restaurant. When my mom was giving birth, usually in the Liberian culture, when a woman is giving birth, she's surrounded by other women, and a man is not anywhere near it. It's her friends are in the room, and her neighbor and those closest to her are in the room with her. But in South Africa, we had no family there, and she was terrified because I was mixed or colored, as they say. At that time, she had to call for my dad to be in the room because she was afraid I'll be taken away. But kind of understanding that fear, and I feel like a lot of that fear lives inside me. And I feel like I carry a lot of it around, and I feel like I have that same sense of trying to connect, trying to reach back to the spaces I belong to, but I feel like I can't really.
It makes a lot of sense, because you didn't settle in one place as well, but also that fear that you're talking about of being, colored.
Yeah.
Like it's hard because, like, I have to say that I feel like sometimes guilty because I have privilege of being white as a refugee, because it's just seen as you're not, like when people look at me, they just don't feel bad until they know my story, and I'm just like, it has nothing to do with it. But for me, the fear comes more with just legal things, like like not having a passport, for example, in airports, and the fear of applying for, immigration and stuff like that. Like it's just, it's more of like, for example, back in Lebanon when I'm trying to line up, whatever legal document that I need to get, I kind of like hide my document behind my back because I'm just terrified because other people just don't like it. There's a lot of like anti-Palestine sentiment in Lebanon based on history, just because of some historical politics there. I grew up in Lebanon, never telling any of my friends that I'm Palestinian. Imagine. Just because my parents warned me as a child as well, and even like just warning me not to have like, your Lebanese friends, they're not like us, that kind of way. But also my Lebanese friends in like schools, I got a scholarship as a refugee there, but like people would tell me you're not like Palestinian. Like Palestinian people would tell me you're not Palestinian enough, and then Lebanese people would tell me you're not Lebanese enough. It's just like I can't talk about it. It's really like so hard, but it's just like the fact that I have to hide my identity back home and then coming here and realizing, no, why am I hiding my identity? Like this is who I am. Why am I so terrified of telling people that my family were not, middle class or they didn't have money, and like I used to be terrified of that. I used to make up lies and just to have friends and to have a community around me. But then again, I realized that's not me. That's like a fake person. And then I moved here and I'm trying to understand myself here more. And that adds up to that dilemma of who I really am, because I'm still discovering myself, but also not feeling like I belong anywhere, as you said. But yeah, like I feel like we both have fears. They come from different places, obviously, but both come from our own like identities, like identity crises.
No, I hear you. And it's really interesting because when I kind of went trying to navigate a lot of it, I realized that my identity changes every time I enter different spaces. Depending who's in the space, I am a different person. My mannerism change up without me even giving it permission to. The way I speak to my mom, if my mom called me now, you'll hear Liberian English, pidgin English just jump out of my mouth. Only because I think part of my mind recognizes her voice. My mom lives in Liberia. She moved back a few years ago. So when I call her, and I think I just hear her talking about what's going on, their elections at the minute, they're counting the votes, difficult elections happening at the moment. But hearing her, I just go back to Liberian English and start ranting. And I remember once my partner being in the same room when we started dating, and he heard me speaking to my mom, and he was just like, "What did you say?" And then I go to do other things, and I meet other people. I'm in college, and the way I speak is different. But a lot of the time, there is adaptation.
Yeah.
It's not even like changing or having different personalities. You just adapt. We've grown so used to automatically adapting when we enter a space for safety, to protect ourselves, but also to not stand out too much and not be too loud in a space. Not in voice, but in presence. Because I know a lot of the time when I enter like my college classroom, if I leave, the lecturer knows I'm leaving because the hair and yes. So like I can't just slip out. So I'm very aware of my presence a lot of the time, because I used to think, I'm like, am I being strange? Am I just changing my personality? Am I a fake person? But when I reflected more and see when I did it, it's just safety and protection, trying to be fit into spaces all the time.
Yeah, I find myself trying to fit into different spaces all the time. And it's funny, there are aspects that I actually can't control. Like, for example, like my accent. Yeah. Like when I speak in Arabic, for example, like it's not Lebanese or Palestinian. It's like a mix, and I have to explain myself. Like every time I meet Palestinian, okay, listen. I'm like, what you're gonna hear is like my mixed refugee accent from Lebanon. It's like mixed of Lebanese and Palestinian. It's neither of these two. Yeah, it's just like the feeling that we don't have to explain ourselves for just being who we are. That's what I'm trying to just accept and acknowledge and be like, okay, this is who we are. And you know, if people want us, you know, if people actually likes us, they like us for who we are, and our characters, our presence, our potentials, our true selves. And if we just wear our hearts on our sleeves, I say all the time, that's the most important thing.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Well, it's hard, but I think you're doing it already. Just by basically sharing your story. People need to hear it, you know, and it really takes so much courage to speak out and talk about yourself. I think that's like a topic I've been really suppressing for so long. Like I don't talk about my identity, which is basically why I'm stuttering, because it's just something that I try to avoid rather than actually tackle. But rather than we have running away from it, I think we need to face it and accept it. Like, this is the truth, this is who we are. But perhaps it's because I've only been here for 2 years as well, so it's just like me trying to still process it.
Thank you. We have another question. Where will you be in the future? What will your community look like?
Where will I be in the future? In what sense? Work-wise, country-wise? You never know, really.
You decide.
Like me right now, just, you know, I just graduated. So like I gave in my dissertation, which I'm really thankful for. I just had to do it honestly for the immigration process. I was giving up on it for so long. I kept like telling my course director, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to do the dissertation, but I pushed myself anyway. I have aspirations for the future, but in the meantime, my only aspiration is actually getting a nationality or like being recognized as a citizen somewhere.
Yeah.
I listen to other people, I want to be this, I want to be that, I want to travel the world, and I'm like, I just want like a passport. That's all I want, you know. But I have a lot of aspirations aside from that, you know. I love doing something meaningful to the world, and I'm sure you share that. I've seen a lot of injustices. We've seen a lot of injustices. And I think that part of, like, when you're an empathetic person, it could actually help you in so many ways, because it just puts you in a position, not as a savior, but as just a stimulator, basically, being a mediator for a change. I try my best to be that person, being an activist, just involved with the community in any way possible, and working alongside people who need it. Like, I always kind of criticize like groups in general, like when you're talking about, end racism, abolish police, abolish kafala system in the Middle East, for example, and they actually don't work with the community. Like, you're advocating for something, but those people are not actually involved. What I would love to do is basically just work with the community and let those voices out. Because I said it, like, I don't care about theory if it's not inclusive of people from the community, people who are actually minority groups, or people who have been silenced for so long. What my community work would look like is basically just what it has to be and is not, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have to say, I guess.
Thank you. For the future, I'm privileged that when my dad met my mom, I got an Irish passport. Just something that we have no kind of control over. We don't choose where we're born and what country and what we look like. So I think there's so much privileges that we just have automatically that we don't even realize we have until we're in certain contexts and you're like, oh my goodness. I find it very hard to see the future. I live a lot in the past. I get very anxious about the past, and so I find myself, it's something I'm kind of working towards, kind of living in the present. The future will come when I have that kind of stuff processed. When I was growing up in Liberia, I couldn't see myself past 18. I just couldn't imagine it, because you see so much preventable deaths. When I was in Liberia, I got sick. I got malaria, and I was in the hospital and had like my drip in lying down beside this girl, and she was younger than me, and she was on a drip too, and we're having a conversation, and I kind of dozed off, and then I woke up and she had passed away. I remember going to do my West African examination. You do it at the biggest school in the community, and I remember on the second day of exams, my friend Emmanuel, who was sitting across from me, he wasn't there, and I found out that, he died and he got hit by a motorcyclist who was on drugs. I was at my school. The class would go to funerals. And I always thought that was really something that it doesn't exist here like that. I remember my friend got bitten by a snake, and she had a bit of pain and she couldn't walk for a few weeks. And we got to leave the school in the middle of the day to visit her. So I think I just saw a lot of things. I didn't see a lot of future. I didn't know what that would look like for me. But Liberia is great. It's great. It's safer, way safer now comparing. But then you come here and then things are safer, it's steadier, it's more predictable. And then you have the space now to think about the future, but you're still blocked. And so that's the part of me that I'm kind of trying to navigate. And I find it very hard to plan. And planning in the Western world is so important, because people are asking all these questions. What are you going to do? Getting a house, doing this, doing that. There's so much pressure. And sometimes I get caught up in the pressure, and I'm still kind of dealing with the anxiety from yesterday. Yeah. And then you're just here. So the future, I hope the future is kinder. I hope it's nicer. For me, I hope I get through the processing and can do great things in the community. I think this is the longest I've ever lived in a space in Ireland. In 8 years, it's the longest I've ever lived in one place. All my friends left after college and went to do great things abroad. But I'm so I like the idea of community now, because it's the one I have. I hope for a kinder future. I hope for more equal future, but it's hard to see that with everything happening at the moment, and even seeing the European response to what is happening. I just lost hope. I'm like flying the Palestinian flag, and people are told they can't do it, and I'm just like, This is where I live now. I know Europe is not perfect, far from it, but I think that just kind of, that just kind of took me. I'm like, they're stopping people from...
Yeah, it's basically saying free Palestine, you'd be arrested. It's crazy. Like, that's freedom of speech. It doesn't have to do with anything, really. But at the same time, like, for me, the idea of having to go to a protest, for example, I'm like, at this point, no, I don't have as a Palestinian to go for a protest. Let the Europeans go for a protest. Because you've seen what's happening in the world, like the suppression in France, Germany, and all these countries. Yeah. I'm like, no, like, it is our cause, but this is also an internationalist humanitarian crisis, you know? Well, yeah, I understand, like, when you're talking about the past, I think I'm just like, I just don't want to go to the past. I feel like I always want to be in the present, but I struggle to be in the present as well, and I keep going back to the past, but like, I would never go back to Lebanon. And me coming here, people actually like me just being myself, and like, I have friends, you know, like, people just understand where I'm coming from. It just feels great. It still doesn't feel like it's completely, I'm belonging somewhere, because I feel like I'm torn. I'm like two different people in one body. Mm-hmm. It's like my old self of like traditional religious family, but at the same time, like with this mindset of, I grew up with a different, completely political, different mindset. It's funny because you see, like sometimes when it's very strict, you kind of, it's like a reverse effect of, you know, it's pretty normal, like psychologically. And just moving here and having, you know, that support in terms of who I am, just really helpful. But for the future, that's the struggle, because then I'm grappling with two different personas, I feel. Not just two, like a couple of them. But I think it's just really about acknowledging and accepting. And that's still something that I'm trying to acknowledge and accept. And I don't tend to talk about these things because then they're in the past. And I have to move forward. We have to move forward. And as long as we're doing something that is helping one person in this world, I think we're doing enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Everything she said. When looking at the future, and one thing I'm learning myself is just being more empathetic and hoping we create a community, a society where everybody is that more empathetic. When you listen, when you see someone angry, a lot of the time we're just like, that's an angry person, that's a horrible person because of how they're dressed, how they look that day, what they're saying, how loud they're speaking, the language. We're so used to just seeing someone, and our kind of automatic response, our slow thinking would just assign something to them. So maybe creating a world where we are more empathetic to each other and creating space for other people's stories and learning to see ourselves in other people. And it was an exercise I used to practice a little while back, because I realized that I was a bit negative in my thinking. So when I walked past anyone, I would try and see myself in them in some way. I would say hello. If they don't respond back, I'll be like, I've been there, you know. So I made it like a mission to just try to connect to everybody. I walked from college to the city. I justified everything that happened. I'm like, I've been there. I've looked like that one day. It kind of stopped my fast thinking mind from making judgment and assumptions. And I think if we create societies where we saw people for who they are, not for a moment, and realize that they have a world of stories and a life and people that I feel like the dehumanization that we have created in this world is very disheartening and sad.
I think it's systemic, really.
Yeah,
it's in everything, in every single, you know, like, it's just mental health institutions, like that's one. Like, I think these should be based on community-based rather than individual, oh, let's see your goals and work on that, you know, self-development. I think that's all shite, sorry, but like, it needs to be community-based. It needs to be like communal, because if you're just thinking about your own problems, it's like it's very individual, but this is not it. And mental health needs to be free.
Yes.
But that's one thing, that's mental health. But I'm talking about everything, literally. And the way you're portraying it is because you've been through a lot of systemic thing in your life.
Yes.
You're just like, you can't see anything because it's just like, it's all of these interconnected things that you're facing, which is fair. Like, it's fair to justify, like, I've been there. Because nobody's actually treating the core issue there, which is basically the systemic issue in the world.
Yeah.
But we need solidarity for that, and we need community-based everything, literally.
Yeah, community-based. The future is community.
Future. This is the future, community-based, community-like future.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you to Leen and Fionnuala for sharing their experiences in this first session. Session 2, called My Rebellion, will honor our rage and discuss solutions for the social issues that exist around us. The Wild Ones Conference is made possible with generous support from the Vision Community Support Services and SICAP Cork City Partnership. Our recording and post-production is by Kimaya Tegtmeyer with music from Justin Grounds. Joanna Dugipati is the event producer and founder of Good Day Cork. Find Good Day Cork on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or their website, gooddaycork.com, for more information, content, and events.